This is my friend Cheri, and she just wanted to share her testimony with us today. So Cheri, do you want to just start by telling us a little bit about your childhood, or wherever you would like to start? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I made myself notes because I'm positive I'm going to forget little things here and there. So I think the thing for me is that I grew up in a Christian home all my life, right? My mom and dad were believers. They grew up in Christian homes. And so I have always been taught to live a life that, honors the Lord and pleases Him and to serve Him and things like that. Honestly, I don't remember a day of my life that I haven't been hungry to serve the Lord. Like, that's just not, part of my story. I've always known that He loves me, and I've always known that I love Him. And I've always known that, He rescued me from, who I could have been.
Yeah.
And so as a Christian, when you hear other people's testimonies about, like coming to the Lord in this big ordeal and like life changing, and I've always kind of like in the back of my fleshly mind been like, oh, I don't have one of those,
Yep.
And so I've been kind of like, I don't know, like, oh, my testimony isn't powerful because of that, which is such a lie from the enemy, because there's so much, even growing up in a Christian home, so much God saves you from and through that journey. And so I'm like, okay, like embrace, like I am grateful that God saved me from my youth. I am grateful that I've never known a day without loving Him. That has been a protection over my life and has saved me from so many things. So how could I look at that as something negative? Like that's such a beautiful thing, and not a lot of people can say that, and I'm blessed to have been born into that, So I definitely loved, that I was raised under, my father, who is very, very studious person. He loves to read the Word. He loves to dig deep and study. He's not ever just happy with the status quo. Like he's a deep thinker, and so I've grown up under that, and I've kind of just followed right along in those footsteps.
I can see that. You're definitely very similar to your dad.
Yeah,
your dad's wonderful.
We're very similar in a lot of those ways, and I'm grateful for that, because it has been so beneficial to me. But then I also have this other side of me that's very procrastination and very like lean into the flesh, just sit back and relax and enjoy life, and so that's always fun to like battle against. But growing up, my dad was also I would say he grew up not meaning to be, but it's just kind of what happened in a very religious setting. Everything was, we do this because, we don't do this because, and if you do this, consequence, and while those things are true, that's not why we do them. Like there's consequence to everything, right? Whether good decisions, good consequence, bad decision, bad consequence. But we don't do things because of that. We do things out of relationship. I think that he would admit as well, in fact, he has admitted, both of us, that we grew up in that kind of like more of a religious mindset, and we didn't know that, and we didn't feel like it was religious, but on the relationship side, you look back and you're like, wow, I was so stuck in all of that. For instance, feeling like if I hadn't read my Bible, like, I had let God down, or and those things, those aren't from God. Like that's not who He is. So I think that a lot of that mindset had followed me throughout my, of course, formative years and into teenhood and adulthood, and it wasn't until I would say maybe like my daughter was born, that she's my second child, that things really started to like change. Because before it was like, this is my faith, this is my God, I love Him, I want to serve Him, but do's and don'ts and do's and don'ts. And when this is right around the time my grandma Goldie passed away, God was really putting into me, like she was pouring everything she had in her last breaths into me, and I was just like, okay, give it to me, because I know I don't have much time left. And so it was like during this time that she was like, you know, just really mentoring, and I was seeing a different side of relationship that I'd never seen before. And even though she had so much religion attached to it, I was seeing this relationship blossom out of it. And I was like, God, that's what I want. Like, I am hungry for that kind of a relationship who, you know, can utter torment with cancer riddling your body, and you're going to the hospital, but you're ministering to everybody else. like they come to cheer you up, but
she was the real deal. She was a soldier. She just exuded love.
Yes,
I have very few encounters with her and memories, but every single one of them I can remember feeling absolutely loved and cherished by her, which is just the love of Jesus flowing through her to me, who she really wasn't close with at all. I was just in her environment. And every single time I felt loved. And I think I've heard so many people talk about her since her death, and everybody says the same thing. It's such a powerful life.
It is. It's such a beautiful legacy to like to be able to honor and to come after. And gosh, I miss her so much. But you know, even in her passing, the Lord has done. Even in her passing, the Lord has done a lot. Has grown me up and has used that loss to, you know, I looked to her. You know how in Exodus God says to Moses, like essentially like to Aaron, you're God in a sense, you know, not, you know what I mean. And so she was my Moses. And I would look to her, and I would kind of get relational from God from her. And so I would use her almost in a place of God at certain times. And so when she passed, the Lord had to break that, obviously. And he was like, hey, like I taught you all this. These are all good things, but you're directing it to the wrong person. And so he just kind of redirected, and I was like, oh, this is really painful. I don't want to do this, but okay, let's go.
Let's go. Walk with me, Lord.
So, I just kind of like thrown into this, I feel like swimming pool, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to swim. So that was a really hard part of my life. But going back to like childhood, my dad was super hungry for God. You know, some misdirected, of course, sometimes misled in some areas, you know, held on to things that shouldn't have, traditions of the elders, that kind of stuff, you know, it happens. I think we're all guilty of it somewhere.
Of course.
And, but he always strove for righteousness. He always strove to be in right relationship with God. And I got to see that, and I was encouraged by it and like kind of catapulted because of it. I just was taught never to be okay with just being, you know, you always have your hands in something. And servanthood was always everything. Like, you know, you go to the church potluck, you're the last to eat. You know, you're the last to sit down, you're the last to leave, you're the first to get there to make sure everything's set up, you know. That was just life. And, you know, we would go early in the morning on Sundays, and we would pray over every single chair in the sanctuary, and I would watch him pray, and I would listen to him pray, and we would just, that was us, that was our life. And I was always kind of, you know, on his heels. My sisters usually weren't into those kind of things. They were like, you know, I want to sleep, I want to you know, other fascinations. But that was if the doors of the church were open, I was there.
That's incredible.
That was just my life. And honestly, it's so weird trying to balance that now.
Because you can't overdo it. But the relationship you had with your dad, just the fact that I just think of, you know, so many kids nowadays that just don't have a father figure at all, and what a blessing it is. Along with, there's always the negative, you know, but what a blessing to be able to watch your dad pray over the seats and to, like, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful legacy, like you said about your grandma, just to leave that for your kids, to let them see you do that. It's really special. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
But I was just thinking,
really
man,
is.
I hope my kids see that someday, even with all my problems. that
I
they would
know.
say something.
I know. I think about how many times I have failed my children.
Yep, me too.
It's like a constant thing that the Lord
Every
is
single
working
one of
out in
them.
me.
Yep. Grace.
But I'm like, my parents did the best that they could
Yeah.
with what they had and where they were at in their walk of life, in each season, and that, I think that deserves honor. They never tried to harm us or neglect us or anything like that. I mean, things happen, that's part of life, but they did the best.
Yeah.
So anyways, throughout this time, this aspect of religion, I would carry it maybe like a backpack, or more like armor, if you will. Like, it was always on. It was always something that I carried, and I moved through the motions through, because another kind of aspect is that, like, because I'm a learner, Old Testament has been my bread and butter. Like, I love the Old Testament. If I could sit for hours, endless hours in Genesis and Exodus alone and just be happy. Like,
so
we could have conversations for weeks on what goes on in those two books, and I'm just happy as a clam.
Yeah.
But it means that I'm seeing what God's done in Old Testament, and I'm placing myself in that.
Yeah.
I'm seating myself in Old Testament. And so I haven't yet stepped into, like, that New Testament, like what Christ really did for me.
Yeah.
Like, I knew he came, I knew he set me free from my sins, all of that, but there was an aspect that I really I wasn't grasping.
Right.
And so when I was growing up as a young girl, my mom went through a lot of things, and for the sake of time and letting her testimony be her testimony, I won't go into too many details, but there was a time where she wasn't there, and she was gone from my life, and there was an accident that happened that put her, completely in a tailspin. She couldn't talk, she couldn't walk, she had to learn to write, she had to learn everything over again, and which meant that she was in a facility. Dad had to work all the time.
Yeah.
He worked a secular job alongside ministry, and so he was gone providing, and that meant I was home with my sisters, and I'm the oldest, so Mama Bird, you step in, you figure things out, and what childhood I had, I enjoyed, but I really didn't get a childhood.
Yeah.
I was really mom most of my childhood.
Yeah.
And when she came back, it was still kind of that, like, okay, how do we go back to the way that it should be? But you really can't, because she's still not, full capacity. And so when she did get full capacity, that was great. But I still, now these are my things that I do.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I just kind of continued to carry that, whether it was, something that she ended up taking the responsibility for, but I kept the mental responsibility of, I don't know. And then she had come back, things were going great, she had rehabilitated, learned new life again.
Yeah.
And then her and my dad went through struggles, and then she was gone again. And so again, I'm left with my sisters as a young preteen. I was 9 years old and left taking care of my sisters. And so, I don't want to malign what went on with her. Like, she wasn't doing something to, like, abandon us or anything like that, but she was going through something.
Yeah. And
she dealt with it the best way that she knew how. But unfortunately, what was left was me being a mom.
Yeah.
And so, God has brought healing with all of that, thank the Lord, and He has brought her to a healthy place as well. So I'm so grateful that that's kind of come full circle. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, growing up, I kind of felt abandoned, and so I would look for that fulfillment in other things. And so as young as 12, I fell in love with somebody. I mean, head over heels, I was done.
Yeah.
The rest of my life was planned out, end of story. There was no question. Mom and Dad hated it.
Yeah.
They were like, this is not happening over my dead body.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, over your dead body.
Yeah,
like, this is happening.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. I remember that. Me too. Yeah.
And you were there through most of that. So,
We kind of lived the same life.
Yeah.
In very many ways. It's very strange.
It is. So I just kind of threw myself into that because that's where I was getting that validation. Yep. That's where I was getting love. Yep. And I felt seen, and I felt heard, and I felt appreciated. And not that I wasn't getting that from my dad.
Yeah.
Certainly was. But, and when my mom was there, she was giving that. But there was a hole.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to explain that other than the enemy takes the opportunities that he can, and he plants stuff into your life. And so he planted this seed of abandonment.
Yep.
And whether it had any truth to it or not, it was there.
Yep.
And so
he doesn't deal in truth anyway.
No.
He doesn't care. He'll lie, twist, manipulate.
Absolutely.
He will take any little ground that
Yeah.
he's given, whether it's fair or not.
Absolutely.
So,
He took full reign in that, and just he planted this seed. And so I sought to be loved, I sought to be seen, and so when I would go through that relationship, and really in the end was a kind of again left, like abandoned. There were other priorities. Everything else was more important, and I was just kind of left on the sideline thinking,
ouch.
God, if this is going to be my life, if I'm going to have to seek you on my own for the rest of my life, and I'm going to have to be the leader of my home, and I'm going to constantly have to seek for approval and affection and love and attention and to be seen, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I walked away from that relationship. It was incredibly painful. So silly.
Yeah.
Years later, how
Yeah,
it
but
still
it still
stings.
hurts. Yeah.
And I sought it in other relationships. I went into high school with guys, oh my gosh, just so stupid. So stupid.
Yep.
Like, what were you thinking?
It's that underdeveloped brain. That's what I blame it on. Yep.
And I mean, the guys, they were very sweet,
Yeah.
whatever, but they weren't anywhere that I, like, come on, Cher.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I'm getting involved in ways that I have no business getting involved, right?
Yeah.
But all the time, I carry this backpack of religion.
Yeah.
And all this time, I'm telling myself, okay, we're not going to hold hands, we're not going to kiss, we're not going to X, Y, and Z because...
all the rules.
Yes, all the rules. Because, my mom and dad, I was conceived prior to marriage.
Yeah.
And I was born a month into their marriage. And so all my life I have fought this, like, you weren't wanted, you were a mistake type thing. And I was like, I'm never going to do this to my kid, you know? Like, I'm going to do things God's way. And in making that my aim, the devil used it to trip me up.
Yeah.
It was like I had pronounced this, like, over my dead body.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
He's so smart.
So, yeah, very, very cunning.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what was happening, if I'm being honest. Like, I look back in it, and all of the ways that I had fallen into these little pits, little by little, like, rationalizing. We can hold hands. It's no
Yeah.
big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit on his lap. No big deal.
Yeah.
I can kiss him. No big deal.
Yeah.
I can X, Y, and Z. No big deal.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're looking up, how can you do X, Y, and Z without getting pregnant?
Yep. Yeah, I remember having those conversations in high school also.
Yeah. And so it just was this slow fade, right? And so we as in my family we're in this really weird period where my dad was like feeling that he was supposed to lead a church, and so we were considering as a family moving to Johnstown, where the church was, and at this time I was about 16, and I didn't want to, because I was like getting ready to go into my junior year, like my last 2 years of high school, and I'm like, God, come on, like give me a break. You want me to end my entire life, leave every friend I've ever known? I've been in the same house since I was like 7. I mean, come on. And so of course I fought the entire way. I was like, yeah, let's do the church thing, but a 45-minute drive, we can make that every Sunday.
It's not
like,
that big of a deal.
No, it's really not. But you know, he was like, well, if we're gonna be there, then we should really be there. And so we were looking at all the options, and I was fighting it tooth and nail. And so during this time, I had been telling myself while in and out of these relationships, like, you're doing this the godly way, you're gonna do this the godly way, you're gonna do this the godly way, while holding hands, while sitting on lap, while testing the limits, right? While putting my feet in the dip in the pool, just a little bit, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And so, but I'm telling myself that I'm doing this the godly way. And it wasn't until honestly like maybe 2 years ago that clicked. And I was like, oh my word. Self-deception this entire time. Like, I kept looking back at myself and thinking, how can somebody who strove her entire life to do things God's way, I mean, and I worked hard. I read books, I put parameters, I mean, I did things, I had accountability partners, I did all the things that you can do to avoid falling in this trap, because I was not going to be my parents. I wasn't going to be a statistic. I was going to be righteous. And all this time my head says, you are being righteous, you are being righteous, you are being righteous. And I was being anything but. And like I said, maybe 2 years ago, the Lord was like, this is how that happens. It's called self-deception. And you bit into the lie that you were following me, and you weren't. You were following the lust of your heart. And it just kind of like hit me like a ton of brick. I sought you. I did all the right things. How? Well, he's tricky. It's very, I think the enemy is so good at disguising himself as something that he's not. And I was so hungry to be approved that I was like, okay, this is the right lane. This is like, you're doing things the right way, pat on the back. And it was a complete lie. And so I had gotten involved in a relationship when I was 16, 17, right in that period where my family had gone to Johnstown. We hadn't moved there, but we were ministering there, and things seemingly were going really well. I had let go of this relationship, like it's that one relationship that I'm talking about. It was like there since I was 12, then kind of got disturbed, life happens, we just kind of separated. I started dating somebody in high school, and then we kind of found each other again, and we started dating, and then I was like, this is it. Like, this is it, we're on cruise control. And that's kind of when I realized, like, he's not who God has for me. He's not even paying attention to me.
Yeah.
You know, like, he cares more about his friends and his life than me. And so it was just kind of a wake up, like, hello. And so I step into this other relationship, right? My heart's been broken. I'm a little bit vulnerable, but I'm like, okay, mom and dad hated pick number one.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, this is not for you. Not anything against the person, but it is what it is. It wasn't for you. And so they were like, my dad, of course, was like, don't date ever.
Yeah.
Like, be a virgin. Go to a nunnery.
Yep. Just devote your life to Jesus.
Right? Go in a tower, grow your hair long. Like, and my mom really, much of the patterns that she did, I learned that I follow.
Yep.
She lived through me.
Oh.
And so all the things like I think the romance that she kind of missed out on.
Yeah.
Or that she wanted back. When she saw it in me, she kind of clung to it.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this is it, this is it, this is it. And I noticed I do that with my daughter. And this last year, the Lord slapped me on the hand and was like, don't do it.
There's so much to be said about generational patterns and generational curses. And
yes.
Oh,
like,
it's real.
Do you appreciate the path you took? No.
Yeah.
Do you want your daughter to take that path? No. Then stop it.
Yeah, stop.
So I worked really hard. The Lord has worked really hard in me to stop that. But it's hard. I do it all the time. So anyways, she kind of like lived vicariously through me, right? And it was, oh, this is a healthy relationship. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like, you didn't like the first one, let's try your pick.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got involved with this guy at that church in Johnstown, and we ended up dating for a few months. But again, dipping toes in the water where they shouldn't be every time you're going to go a little further out.
Yeah. And
I found myself in this disgusting, twisted relationship where, I mean, he was learning to be physically abusive. He hadn't like hit me or anything like that, but he would do the things like grab the wrist real hard, turn, pull me around, threaten me, those kind of things. Threaten as in like, if you leave me, I'm going to tell X, Y, and Z. But, those kind of threats. And so I, before I had really woken up to the fact that this is not healthy, I'm still kind of like in the exploring phase of the relationship. I'm finding myself, dipping my toes in the pool. And so one night, it was a total kind of, perfect storm. I had ended up in the hospital because I had something going on with my stomach, and they were like, something's not right. It was super distended. My mom, of course, thought I was pregnant. Yeah. And I was like, something's not right. We have not gone that far, so that's not possible.
Yeah.
But
something else.
Yeah, something else is afoot here. So we went into the hospital. They let me go. They didn't know what was wrong. They were like, maybe it's just, gas. I don't know.
Right.
They were like, I have no clue. Go home. So I go home. It's super, super late. This guy had happened to be down in town. He lives up in Johnstown. His car was acting funny, and so my mom was like, just sleep on the couch. It's really late. You can go home in the morning. We called his parents. Hey, he's going to sleep on the couch. And
he didn't stay on the couch.
He didn't stay. Yeah. Well, he stayed on the couch. I didn't stay in my bed.
Yeah.
And it was just like I set myself up.
Yeah.
I went into this like, okay, we're just gonna sit here and visit until you fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, and then the next thing you know. And I remember thinking in my head, and I'm trying to be careful with words, of course, but I remember thinking, yes, for kisses, yes, for cuddling, yes, but wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And I remember saying no, and that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, something had happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, what?
And it was just done.
What just happened? And it was done. And I think it was just such a weird moment.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it was very surreal.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember thinking, did that just happen?
Yeah.
You know? And just feeling like this emptiness. And a few days later, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm done. I didn't want that.
Mm-mm.
And I put myself in a position to allow it to happen.
Yeah.
But I also said no.
Yeah.
And so now my mind is playing these tricks, right? My mind is telling me, well, you did it to yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe all the things, like, it is your fault.
Yeah.
And it was my fault. It was, to a certain degree.
To a certain extent, yeah.
And then, you know, he has to take responsibility
Yep.
for not caring and doing what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I all this time, I know in my heart, he did not mean to hurt me.
Yeah.
Like, that was not his goal.
Yeah.
His goal wasn't to take advantage of me.
Which is one of those, so many reasons that we should not be doing this stuff when we're that age, because there's not at all to make excuses, but there's very little self-control, there's low education, you know,
Yes.
you get riled up, kids are impulsive, like, it just needs to be a no
Yeah.
until you're older.
Absolutely.
And there's no excuse
Yeah.
at all, but yeah, there's reasons why there's protective measures
Yes.
when you're young.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I wish, it's easy to say I wish my mom hadn't let him stay behind.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to say if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. But we all know that my path was leading.
Yeah.
Like, it was going to happen, period.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it was there or in a car or, like, it was going to happen because that's the path I was on. And so, all said and done, he is like, for lack of better terms, head over heels. He's like, no, I want this relationship. Like, I love you. And I'm like, no, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
You know, this is way far.
We're in the wrong
Yeah,
space.
we have
not what I wanted.
We're not in Kansas anymore, and I
Yeah.
don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Like, take me home.
Yeah.
And
It's not my plan.
and it was just like this moment of realization all of a sudden that I wasn't what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I was very quickly somebody who I despised.
Yep.
And I didn't like it. And so I was like, I've got to get back to where I'm supposed to be. And there was no going back.
Yeah.
There was no fixing that. And so okay, I'm like, all right, you know, I want to end this. Let's just end it. And he was not about to let that happen. And so it was the whole, you know, wrist grabbing and twisting. And if you don't stay with me, then I'm gonna tell your father that, you know, we had sex. And
Yeah.
you know, so I remember one Sunday after church, we went to a restaurant together, his family and our family. And both of the families were in ministry together.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me, and I knew it. I knew my stomach just hit the floor. And my sisters, his sister, were all sitting at the table. Just out of nowhere.
Yes. Such manipulation and ugh.
So I took off. I ran to the bathroom. I locked myself in there. My mom followed after me. She's like, what is going on? And I'm like, all I can get out is, I said no.
That's so sad.
But ultimately, I had put myself in that situation. And so now we go back to their house after lunch because we're like, clearly we can't continue this at a restaurant.
Yeah.
We need somewhere private to talk. And so we went back to their home and sent the girls to play. And my dad was like, is this right? You know,
Mhm.
is this really what happened? Because if you're telling me that's what happened, I'm calling the cops.
Yeah.
But if this isn't what has happened, are you willing to ruin his life?
Yeah.
And I was like, I wrestled with, no, I put myself in that situation.
Yeah. He should have absolutely listened to you, but you
Yeah.
made choices to go down.
Yeah. And how can I know that he didn't do that maliciously. You know, it wasn't something to hurt me. But all I could say, because I was covered in religion, I was covered in pride, I was covered in shame and embarrassment, and all I could say was, I said no.
Yeah. Which is true. You did say that.
And so, I told my dad, please don't call the cops. And of course he didn't, because he knew. I think he knew. I don't think that he necessarily believed my story completely.
Yeah.
I think that he thinks that I was totally okay with it and then regretted it afterwards.
Yeah.
But you know, later on, I was like, no, this is really what happened. Like, I put myself in that situation, but I said no.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that had to kind of be clarified years later, because I don't think that he believed
I'm gonna
me.
grab you a tissue really quick.
Thank you.
You-
Sobbing like a baby.
I should have had them ready.
And so, thank you.
Man, that is so heavy for such a young age. Our brains just, as adult women, almost 40, these are topics that are hard to navigate. Who's to blame? I mean, clearly there's blame on him. Clearly there's blame on you.
Right.
The majority goes to him. But it's still such a, I
Yes.
can't imagine being that age and trying to navigate that emotionally and intellectually, and then also wrap around where you stand before God now, and
Yeah.
just all of that religion framework
Yes.
where now you failed, so you're not as
Mhm.
good. That's
Exactly.
so hard.
Exactly. So now I'm carrying this backpack of religion. I'm carrying shame. I'm carrying this weight of. I had to, because of our position in the body, I had to go before my church.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to step down from the worship team because I can't do that anymore. And so we didn't, you know, share the full story to the team at the time. I just said, you know, there's some things going on. I'm stepping down. I'm not fit to continue to lead at this time. And so we kind of left it at that, right? Well, the mind track, or the track that's playing in my mind is, you said no, and you've been taken advantage of, and it's gone. All this that you've worked for, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. All your life, everything that you've shaped up to do, your accountability, your rules, your searching after God, it's all gone. It's done. All of it's wiped away.
Failed.
You failed. And I was left with, how did this happen? And I remember it was at this time that I kind of saw my husband.
Yeah.
At the time we were in choir together, and he saw me, and we had known each other-ish, you know,
Yeah.
been in proximity, but we hadn't really had relationship, friendship, anything like that. And so he started to notice me, and we started talking, and right, I'm vulnerable. I've lost everything, and I've lost what it is to be me. Because to be Cheri, it was to be pure.
Yeah. It's so hard.
I just disappeared in it completely. And so he kind of came along, and he's like, okay, you know, I see you wounded, you know, you poor,
Yeah.
poor little baby. You're so pure, you're so sweet. And he just kind of like wrapped me up, and at this time, the guy that I had just ended a relationship with, he was still kind of coming around and making threats, and so my husband just kind of like, you know, squared up and was like, get out of here or you're gonna regret it.
Yeah.
And so he took off. which I am super grateful
Yeah.
for.
That's wonderful.
As I did not need that
Yeah.
in my life. And so, but he just kind of came in like a white knight,
Yeah.
you know, and was like, I'll make it better.
Fixing everything.
Yeah, I'll make it better. Let me love you like
Yeah.
you're supposed to be loved. Let me give you what you need. What you didn't get from him, let me give it to you. And I was totally okay with that. Because why not?
Yeah.
It was all for nothing anyways.
Yeah.
It's all ruined anyways. What does it matter? And so we did. We fell in love with each other. Like, it was like a boom, boom, boom. Like, we started dating in December, at the end of November, December, and by January, I was pregnant. And I was like, okay, that's what we had to lose. Oh, okay. Became real fast.
Yep.
And, you know, but from the moment that I knew, it was like, okay, God, like, wow, this wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was not the plan.
Yep.
I was supposed to go to Florida to do an internship with a church. I had my plan, right? I was going to go to master's commission after the internship. I was going to go to Berean University to do all, you know, like, this was the plan. I was going to find a godly man who hungered and thirsted after him, and then we were going to get married, and then we were going to have kids, and then we were going to have the white picket fence.
Yep.
Like, this is not the plan. And it was like, okay, like, I've ruined everything. But God has seen, for whatever reason, fit to bless me with a baby.
Yeah.
And to give me a life to steward. And now my life isn't my life anymore. It's this baby's life.
Yeah.
You know? And now, like, all my paradigm, everything just kind of shifted, and it was like, okay, like, I don't know how to do this, but here we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the best that I can, because clearly I am screwed up. And so now all I can do is make it better moving forward. That's all I can do. And so we got married at the end of that same year.
Sorry. Got distracted by something.
That's okay. Let's see, I was pregnant in January. We had our baby in October. He proposed in November, and we were married in December.
Wow. Fast track.
Yeah. And so we were in it, and I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. Like, we're making life happen, because my kid's not going to be without a dad.
Yep.
Like, we are making this happen. And I love him, so, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
We're
this is what it is.
Yep.
And so we just jumped in, and I jumped in as if, now looking back at it, it was like, this is just what I have to do.
Yeah.
You know, this is my duty. This is my life now, and I have to make this work. And I wasn't seeing that even though I had made a mess, God really had given me something beautiful through all of that. And I wasn't recognizing it.
He's so good to us.
He is.
He is so good. He's so good to us.
Mm-hmm. He really is. He was blessing me in spite of all the foolishness. And so, back on track with my notes. Yep, okay. Did I hit it all?
I need to be more organized.
I know, for real.
I love how you have notes.
Okay, so I'm sitting in counseling with my husband a few years ago. Not even a few years ago, it's been maybe a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord's doing all this work and just kind of healing, and like, you don't even know what I've given you. Look what I've given you, you know? You fell, you made these choices, but I've given you a man who loves you and who has provided for you, and all of this and this.
And we're like, how many years later now?
Yeah.
How old is your oldest?
My
Almost
oldest
20?
will be 20 in October.
Yeah, so we're quite a few years.
Yeah. This year we'll be celebrating 20 years
That's
of marriage. It's like weird to think. But yeah, he's like, look at, like, do you not see? Do you not see it? And all of this time I'm thinking, God, how long do I have to live in this, like, punishment almost, like, and because I'm seeing all the things that sin wants to see, right? I'm saying, oh, he doesn't lead like my dad does. He doesn't do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not thinking about, he is a provider. He is faithful. He is loyal. He is, all of these things I'm missing because I'm focusing on, well, that's not what I grew up with.
Yeah.
And that's not what I expected. And so I'm putting him against all these expectations that aren't realistic.
Yeah.
He didn't grow up in a Christian home. He grew up with a Catholic background where, for a while they were going all the time, and then it kind of faded out, and it was kind of like a priester type deal. And he didn't have his dad in his life to teach him.
Yep.
He was doing the best that he could, and he was doing a good job. Yeah. And I wasn't recognizing it.
Preaching to the choir. Like I said, we have very similar stories. And yeah, God took me through that exact same thing where it almost felt like a slap in the head. Like, do you not see what a blessing I gave you? It doesn't look in the package or the way that you expected it to be, but you have there could be no better.
Yeah.
Like I gave you the cream of the crop, and by the way, Alana, you're not the greatest. Like,
yes.
You had some work you needed to do too. And poor Moses has had to put up with this from you, and you didn't reach his expectations.
Yes.
And that was so big for me when I realized, like, what an absolute. I always tell people that I talk to about marriage and when they're struggling with their spouse, like, if you just give it time. Because if I would have thrown in the towel, or you would have thrown in the towel at 10-year mark, you wouldn't have made it to that moment where God spoke that to you and was able to let you see, and it just actually does get more beautiful. It's so hard, but the longer you're in it, I have so much security in my marriage. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah.
At our absolute worst, I know neither of us are going anywhere, and there's nothing more like beautiful than that.
Absolutely.
And if we would have thrown in the towel years ago, we wouldn't have gotten there, and you wouldn't have seen what an absolute gift He's given you and me.
Yes.
All those years ago that we weren't even appreciating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so spot on, really. And there's really there's this saying that my dad says. He says, I wanted a princess, but God revealed that I was a frog.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yep. And I was like, yep.
I'm a frog.
Yep. I'm a frog, yeah.
Yeah.
Warts and all. Like, here I am waiting for my Prince Charming. And what am I doing? What's special?
Yeah.
About
what am I so
me?
great that I deserve this everything?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And so it was just, I don't know, this eye-opening moment where God was like, look what I have done. Do you not see it? Do you not perceive it? And in fact, that's kind of it's hilarious because one of the things that the Lord spoke into me was Isaiah 43, forget the former things, don't dwell on the past, see, I'm doing a new thing. And then he says, now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the desert and streams in the wasteland.
Wait, is that the shirt I'm wearing?
Oh my word.
How crazy
is
is that?
Oh my word.
How weird is that?
That's wild.
That is crazy.
I didn't even notice that. That's pretty stinking awesome.
That is crazy. This is one of those little things that God throws in where He's like, I'm just going to show off.
Right?
Yep.
So in August of 2020, I went on a girls' trip with the women in my family, and I remember waking up one morning, everybody else is pretty much sleeping still, and I'm doing my devotions, and the Lord spoke that to me. And it was just so beautiful, like all these things that you're praying for, all these things that you planted away, like I'm doing something new. So stop focusing on what you've focused on in the past. Start seeing what I'm doing. And it wasn't until I would say a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe, that God was like, hello, wake up McFly.
Yep.
You know, like, do you not see it?
Yeah.
How much more plain can I make it?
Yeah.
And so we are coming, you know, through this really hard life of learning how to be together and how to mesh his expectations with my expectations and his culture with my culture and all of these things. And now we're kind of at this place where like, oh, like, this is a blessing. God gave me you as a blessing.
Yep.
What? What?
So
What?
funny. Crazy thing, God.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what? You've been doing that the whole time?
The whole time.
The whole time? So, you know, the kids, and there's just like all of these things that God had done. And so he's just really, he's worked it together to be something beautiful. And I think all those years ago when I was pleading, God, I don't want to be another statistic. I don't want to be like my parents. I don't, and not in their, you know, in their relationship, but just falling in that same sin.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to follow that pattern. I don't want to be that way. I love you and I want to please you and I want to serve you. And next thing you know, I'm right in the same position and thinking my life is over. And, you know, I look back now and it's like he has redeemed the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Always does.
Joel's prophecy, that's another one that he promised me, probably in 2016, that he would restore the years that the locusts had eaten. And then now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. And not everything is perfect. Boy, is not everything perfect. I'm still struggling. I still have, you know, times where I want to wring his neck.
Yeah.
And where he wants to wring mine.
Yep.
And where I really need him to grow. And I'm sure where he really needs me to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not by any means in this, you know, perfect place. We've still got a very, very long way to go. But now I can look at our relationship and say, wow, God, look what you've done.
Yeah.
Instead of, wow, God, look what I did.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, it's just such a perspective shift. And it's such a place of healing. And gosh, there's so much that goes into really the story of our marriage and the struggles that we've had over the years that I will tell at some point. But it's just amazing to see what he's brought us through.
Yeah.
And, you know, on the movie Fireproof, there's a song that plays, it's called Love is a Fight. I think it's called Love is a Fight. And Love is a War. I have to remember the exact name of it. But that's been our song.
Yeah.
That's been our, so true. Like when I want to run, God, keep me from running. It's a fight. It's a war, but I'm in it. I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here.
And I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
There's been so many times I had to pray, God, give me what I need, not what I want. Even, especially in regards to my marriage, there's been times I wanted to leave where my heart was broken and I was so sad and I'm not being treated the way that I think I should be treated. And you really have to let go of some of those expectations, you know. And I just remember being so broken and praying like, God, I want something different. I want out of this marriage. I want to move on. I want to find somebody new to love me. But give me what I need, not what I want.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that he did, because like I said, all these years down the road, what a beautiful thing we have going. What a beautiful thing you guys have going that we wouldn't have had if we would have ran, you know?
Absolutely.
We would have stayed and fought for it. I feel like it's just so sad to see so many people just give up so easily when you actually just put in the work and let God do his thing. You end up with something so much better.
Absolutely. And can you like imagine trying to do this again with somebody else?
No. Oh my gosh. No.
Oh gosh. No, thank you.
Too many years into that man.
Way too many training hours.
Raise
like
all these kids.
For sure. Like, I mean, he knows everything about me, the good, bad, the ugly, and he's still here. So, but, and you know, just through all of this time, even like on a personal level, God is like, he's putting us in these church bodies. One, we were in for a very, very, very long time. And then he moved us into a different fellowship, and he used that fellowship to really like put us in the fire. And I was like, oh, like this. But he was burning off those imperfections and just changing us. And now he's got us where we are, where it's just this new season of growth and learning. And I've gone from, growing up in Pentecostal where, I mean, growing up, it's hilarious. I look back now, but I remember sitting on a pew when I was maybe 8 and asking my mom why everybody was speaking Spanish and falling asleep in church.
That's so funny.
Like, why are they getting to take a nap? I can't lay down on the pew. Why are they getting to take a nap?
Holy Spirit, move over here.
Right. Follow me.
I'm tired.
And trying to do things to look holy, right? Like, I'm praying.
Yeah.
But I'm actually passing out.
As a kid. Yep. Yep. Don't bother me, I'm praying.
Sure. Grandma, you're peeking.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, he's just done so much. And so I've gone from like this Pentecostal is supposed to be like all this freedom, right? But it was just wrapped in all of this religion, and I wasn't seeing it. And so God takes me into this moment with this other church body that was just like, okay, all word, and like kind of skimp on the spirit a little bit, there's not as much freedom there. You really have to watch your P's and Q's. But he taught me so much in the word, and then he's brought me to this place now where it's like this perfect melody. Or medley rather. Of the two coming together. And so like being able to just move in the deepness and the richness of the word, and yet move in his spirit, and be able to walk in a combination of those two.
Because there has to be both. That's one of the huge problems you see in, I can only speak for the American church, but either you're all on one side and you're very, very biblically based and in the Bible and doctrine and or you're just completely off the hinges. The Holy Spirit told you this and that, and if there's not both and they're not in check with each other, then you're in trouble. You're just not doing it right, and God has patience for the process, Thank God. But I feel that very much in my life too.
So I'm very grateful for where we are now. I mean, no body is going to be perfect. We're all full of hypocrites. We're all imperfect people. I try to tell my kids the church is not a palace, it's a hospital. Broken people come there to be fixed by the healer and the great physician, and imperfect people means not perfection.
Feelings hurt is going to be It takes a whole, to honestly exist in a church as a Christian, or anywhere really, in a family, in a marriage, so much forgiveness, so much grace. But it's so easy to give when you're willing to look at yourself and say, what have I done to God that I needed grace and forgiveness? And he sees the worst in me, not even the me that I'm presenting to the world, but the worst, and he still loves me and forgives me. So who am I to not forgive these people who have hurt me? They're human. They, even when they do have bad intentions, you just have to. Once you look at your own sin, it's so much easier to exist in that place where you can stay in a state of forgiveness.
Absolutely. When you realize how wretched and horrible you are, like when I really take a good look at me, I do not like the picture. Like, it's not pretty. I'm a selfish person. I am vain. I have so many issues, so many hang-ups. And so how can I not extend that grace, you know? And so it really does. It makes it so much easier to see that there's a person behind the mistakes. There's a person struggling to do their best. And how can we not have grace towards that?
And they're in the sanctification process, just like we are. I know this is like a saying that people say, like, oh, if you met me 10 years ago, you haven't seen me in 10 years, let me reintroduce myself, in the process of always changing. But I literally, I would not want to be judged on who I was 10 years ago at all.
No.
And some people, including me, are still in that process. We're still growing and changing, and I really actually am a completely different person than I was this time last year. I've come so far, and I still have so much further to go. So it's just been, for me, such a big process of just learning, give people grace, give people understanding, be quick to forgive, because there's been so many times where I needed that, and the guilt of, you know, just the absolute relief that you get when somebody genuinely just does forgive you, you know,
Right.
and lets it go and moves on. It's just a
Yeah.
blessing.
Absolutely. It's so freeing.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, now the place that I'm at is just, you know, being able to see deliverances, being able to see healings,
It's amazing.
seeing the gospel preached and people changed. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, I grew up playing church, if I'm being
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah.
And it not a slam to anyone in that body or the body itself. Like, it just, we were so blinded to so many things. We did our best with what we had.
Yep.
And now I have something greater,
Mhm.
and I'm like, wow.
Yep.
So yeah, just walking into this new season with the body that God's put me in has been amazing. Watching how I'm growing and being pruned
Mhm.
and all of that.
It's a hard one.
It's not a pleasant journey sometimes, but it's a beautiful one.
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, it doesn't matter whether you, in a certain sense, whether you grew up in a Christian home or whether you lived the world and were saved later. You're gonna go through stuff.
Yep.
You're gonna get dirty.
Yeah.
You're going to be dragged through the mud because that's what the enemy wants.
Yeah.
And the Lord will allow you to make choices. He is not going to suppress that, you
Yeah.
know, in you. He wants you to make your decisions and own them, and he allowed me to do that, and yet he didn't allow me to just go my own way.
Yep.
You know, I made my choices, but he always redirected me.
Yep.
He always
So gently.
showed me.
Just so gently, always
Yes.
guiding.
Such a gentle, perfect shepherd.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm so grateful to be kind of on this side of things and seeing looking forward at, like, the anticipation, this buildup of the end times that we have in front of us, and just like seeing all these
Yes.
things happening, and it's
Oh
just
my
like
gosh.
something is stirring.
Yep.
And I mean, even the other day, I was laying in bed, right? I had a dream, and it's a dream that, a type of dream that I have fairly often. And I woke up, God, I don't want to have this dream anymore. I'm tired of this.
Yeah.
What's causing it? And all of a sudden, he just, like, started revealing things to me. And so I'm talking to him, you know, my husband's asleep. He's got his CPAP thing on,
Yeah.
you know, so he can't hear me.
Yeah.
He's in the zone. And so I'm just praying, and I start confessing these sins that I didn't even know
Yep.
were there.
Yep.
I just come off of this fast, and I was like, okay, God, like, what are you doing? Like, you know, because it kind of felt like, yes, I did it. I was super proud. Like,
Yep.
I had pushed through. This is a big accomplishment for me. But I was like, okay, but in the spirit, like, what happened? You
Yep.
know? Because I hadn't really seen
Yeah,
anything.
it always happens in the spirit before the physical.
Yes.
So there's chains breaking and
Yes.
things happening, but it doesn't manifest in the physical.
Yes, and thank
Yet.
God we don't operate by, like, emotions
Yep.
only, because I would have been like, oh, well, that
It
was
was
a
all
waste
for
of time.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm laying there in bed, and he is just, I'm talking, but it's not coming from me.
Yeah.
And I'm confessing these sins left and right, like, God, forgive me for this and this and this and this and this, and I didn't even, and what about this? And I'm, like, going through all of this stuff, and I'm like, holy cannoli, what is going on right now? And then I start to feel, you know, I got, like, you know, the goosebumps. You know, when you can feel something there that's not supposed to be there.
Yep.
And I feel like this presence come over me, and I kind of start to stiffen, and I'm like, So I start confessing,
Yep.
and I'm like, in the name of Jesus, I rebuke and I renounce, and I'm
Yes.
going after it. And so I start to feel like this real weird, like, digestion stuff happening.
Yep.
And so I get up and I go to the restroom, and and I'm sitting on the restroom toilet with a can in front of me because I'm nauseous, and I'm just confessing these sins before God.
Yep.
It's the most ridiculous sight, I'm sure, because
Yep.
my husband woke up and he's noticing that I'm not there. So he comes to the bathroom. He's like, "What
What
are
are
you
you
doing?"
Having a moment with the Lord.
Having a moment. It's all good. Go back to bed.
Yep.
And so he's like, "All right, weirdo." But I'm in there and I'm laying hands on myself. I'm throwing up stuff. I'm coughing up things. It was just the weirdest thing.
Yep.
The weirdest thing in the world, because I didn't even know almost like what was happening.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm kind of like, I feel like I'm kind of watching myself do this, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yep.
And so, but I just realized, like, God is pruning his church, right?
Yeah.
He is like stirring up things, and he is making clean his bride, and just these little moments of, you know, where he's like, hey, you didn't know these chains were there, but we're breaking them. Boom, 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 boom. And I cannot even tell you, like, when I got done, I went to bed and I was like, okay, like, I'm feeling at peace now, you know, whatever. I laid down. But the next day I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's go. Like, it's go time.
Yep.
Like, he is awakening something in us, and
Yeah,
it's
he is.
just so exciting.
I think that I'm so grateful to be alive right now. Like, there is
Yes.
so many. I feel like if you look around in the physical, I often like catch myself feeling bad for my kids because there's so many.
Yeah.
Just in a worldly sense,
Yes.
the pressures that they have, and the
Obstacles.
obstacles, and the
Yeah.
phones, and the videos, and like,
Yeah.
you know, and then 10 times that for the spiritual world
Yeah.
of what they're facing. But then God, he's so aware
Yeah.
that there is such an organized, concerted effort from the kingdom of hell to
Yep.
come against us,
Yep.
especially in this time, that he has empowered us
Yeah.
with such greater power, and he is showing up, and he is, it's just beautiful. Like, I literally cannot wait to see what happens in the next couple years. It's I wouldn't say scary. I'm not scared at all, but I am so like just motivated and curious, and I don't know, I'm just really, it's a little anxiety in the sense
Yes.
that like I want to start
Yeah.
seeing things. I'm ready, but God's like, you're not.
Yeah.
Like, you're not
Yes.
ready. I'm giving you, Alana, if I
Yes.
threw you out there right now,
Yeah.
you're not ready. You need time. I'm working on things, but we'll get there, you know, and I'm
Yes.
just really excited to see what happens.
It's very much like the David story, right? He starts in the garden tending the sheep, and he's protecting from the lion and the bear and the wolf, and
Yep.
then Goliath.
Then
like,
Goliath.
you got to work your way up, baby. He's like,
Yep.
you're not ready for
You're
it
not
yet.
there. You'll
I'm
get
like,
there.
all right.
It's funny how you say your husband walked in on you in the bathroom while you're doing all this. I remember one time I was in the car driving to work, and I had some extra time, and I was listening to a deliverance video of Isaiah Salvidar. So I had it on, and I really was like trying to do some self-deliverance and just searching myself. And so I pulled over on the side of the road, and I'm really just going at it, you know, and all of a sudden I hear honk honk. And I look over, and my husband, my daughter, and he rolls up, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you doing here?" Because I didn't work anywhere by our house, you know. And he's like, "I had to bring something." And he's,
Hilarious.
I just thought, man, that must have been so funny for them or anybody. I don't care what other people
Right.
think, but he probably, we never
It's
talked about it,
hilarious.
but I'm sure he knew what I was doing. He knows he married a weird woman.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's pretty much. He's like, yep, this is par for the course
Yep.
at this point.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, God's doing, I'm really excited about what God's doing right now. It's going to be, I think whatever he has planned for these end times is going to be so much better than we ever expected. He's
Yeah.
so much bigger, greater.
Yeah.
We have all our ideas of what we think pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib. Who cares?
Yeah.
I just want to do what God has planned
Yeah.
because it's going to be better than
Yeah.
anything. Like, none of us have it figured out anyway.
Absolutely.
So let's just do it. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm not ready, but I'm ready.
I'm ready to be willing
Yeah.
and faithful and obedient.
Yeah,
That's
I'm ready to be used.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely a lot of other layers, a lot of other pieces to the testimony. But I think, like, you know, just everybody has a testimony. The word says that we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And
Yeah.
if you ever think that your testimony is not powerful, you're being lied to.
Yeah.
And I swallowed that lie for years.
Yep, me too.
And years, and I don't know if you, I'm sure you remember, obviously, we went on a trip to Belgium together. We went on a
Mhm.
missions trip, and there was this point in the missions trip in Belgium where we were staying at our host church, and we were each sharing our testimonies. And I don't think everybody shared, but you know,
Yeah.
a good amount of us did. And I remember our youth pastor Lenny asking me to share, and I thought, I don't have anything to share.
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to share?
Yeah.
You know? And so I kind of shared something, but it was like, I felt so insignificant. And
Yeah.
so, like, what's this going to do for anybody? Like,
Yeah.
God loves me, I love him, yay!
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I was 14 years old. I hadn't
Yeah,
really
there's
gone
not a
through the
whole lot
muck
going on
yet.
yet, yeah.
Or I just hadn't been able to see any of it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'm so insignificant. And so that's kind of followed me. And God is like, what a lie. You know, stop believing it, because your testimony is powerful. It is how can I say that what God's done in my life is insignificant?
Yep.
How can I say that it's not powerful? How can I say that it's not worth proclaiming from the rooftops?
Yep.
You know, how dare I?
And I think our perspectives are so important to God too. Just, I don't remember the book or the chapter or the verse, but in the Gospels, the disciples of John come up to Jesus and they say, John wants to know, when John was in prison,
Yeah.
are you the true Messiah? He wants to know. And Jesus said, he could have said anything.
Yeah.
He could have said anything. And he said, go tell John what you've seen,
Yeah.
what you've heard,
Yeah.
you know. And I think just the experiences that we've been through are so valuable.
Yeah.
And there's
It's good.
if we're just obedient, God will use what we've been through and the words that we have to say and what we can testify about what he's done. Who knows? You know, it could echo into eternity
Yeah.
what the way that it could help somebody else. You know.
Absolutely.
So our testimonies are very important.
Mhm.
As hard as it is to share them.
For sure.
Yeah. Yep. Well, let me ask you this as a closing thing. Who would you say Jesus is to you?
Hmm.
That's a very popular question on these testimony things, but I just love hearing everybody's response.
I would say, let's see. Who Jesus is to me. It's a lot in that question. I think that the best way that I can sum that up is he has always been my savior,
Mm-hmm.
but I am learning to make him my Lord
Yeah.
and make him Lord over every
So
kingdom of
good.
my heart.
Yep.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
It takes work. It
Oh, that's
takes
so good.
it takes pruning. It takes painful things to happen. But he's always been my savior. I've always loved him. I've always appreciated his gift to me.
Mhm.
But now he's becoming my master, and I'm learning what it is to be his servant. And I've always he's always been Abba Father. Always full of love, always just ready for me to come and give a big hug and just love on me. But making him the king over the kingdoms of my heart is really what I'm learning him to be now. And it is such a rich and deep, amazing journey that, wow, I'm just blessed to be on the roller coaster.
Yeah, I agree. That's really good. Well, thank you for coming and sharing. And even me, as your friend, we've been friends. When did we meet? Maybe like 6, 7 years old, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it would have
Somewhere
been
about
when. No, it was before. Before that. So I mean, we
Yeah,
haven't been
it's
like
been
6
a
or
long
7.
time, and our families were friends, and we went to the same church.
Mhm.
And there's things that you shared that I never even knew, you know, that have touched me deeply. So I thank you for sharing that with us. And hopefully we'll look forward to part 2